Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VCO Studio show hosted by me, Ben Constanduros. We are a young and upcoming company supporting esports racing and attempting to merge the world of real and esports racing, something that I'm particularly passionate about. And so we want to educate you in the processes and people behind this amazing world. In the last 3 weeks of this show, we have had a pro sim racer, a real world racer with a love for his sim. And now we've got one of the most influential personalities in the world of sim racing. Dom Duhan, head of Team Redline and CDO of rFactor 2, and so many things to chat about, Dom. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here, Ben. I've been waiting for the invite on my mailbox, pressing refresh constantly.
It's great to have you with us. We're going to do a little bit of a This Is Your Life before we get into technicals. Okay. So you're obviously, I think I may have once said drunkenly to you that you're the grandfather of sim racing. Probably a little unfair, but how did you first get into racing on a computer?
Well, I mean, I'm like one of those old boys. I started with like Indy 500 and GP1, Jeff Crammond stuff, but then kind of gave it up for quite a while. Then came back when I saw you could drive online against other people with TOCA 2 and Grand Prix Legends. And I remember having a keyboard and racing my bro on a 28.8K modem on Grand Prix Legends at Watkins Glen and never finishing a lap. And then I knew I love sim racing.
And you were trying to do that on a keyboard. That's seriously not advisable on Grand Prix Legends.
No, I mean, back then, I don't even know what wheels you could get. I don't know. I'm sure there was
something that was sprung loaded. It had force feedback, but it's sprung loaded. I can't remember what it was called. It stuck out from my computer quite a long way.
Super Thomas wheels were the big ones back then. I remember that, and I had a Mad Cat, so I remember now actually with the old PlayStation. But no, I got in through that, and I started doing TOCA 2 and competing at a good level. I started winning tournaments. I didn't know what was going on. And bearing in mind my partner, who I'm still with, believe it or not, she showed me how to get online and download these racing games. And I don't know whether she's pleased with that or not over all these years. But anyway, I started doing that and then just competing in loads of F1 stuff. And I got quite good and decided to set up a team nearly 20 years ago.
So your first foray into kind of the professional world was Team Redline. What was the motivations behind that initially?
I think it was around bringing a band of really strong drivers together, and one, we're stronger as a sponsorship proposition, and two, there was a collective thinking around setups at that time as well, a bit like today, really. And I knew Gregor Hutu, which many of you guys will know as well. And we were competing against each other. And I said, "Hey, man, why don't you join us?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay." As a 19-year-old Finnish kid, and what a driver!
That was quite a good sentence from Gregor. Yeah, okay, wasn't it? At that time, I mean, he's a very fast driver who doesn't speak a lot.
No, his actions speak louder than words, definitely. But yeah, Gregor, I mean, over the years, he's been around for 20 years and competed at the highest level for 20 years. I mean, for those of you who remember Grand Prix Legends, one of the hardest racing titles, I'd say probably the hardest racing title of all time. The level of ability to get that car around the Nürburgring under 8 minutes or 7:40 or whatever they did was insane. So Gregor's got the skills.
It was such a great game. That was the start for me, and I just knew that I needed a wheel and pedals to get around. I'm amazed you tried with the keyboard. So from starting that team, how did it become? What were kind of the basic rules of a sim racing team? Because to be honest, you kind of set up what teams are today. You set up the structure.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And there was some good organizations when we first started as well. What we knew at the time was to get a team that had some strong personalities, but also strong talents, people that could develop setups, and then from the other side, people that could do the admin, you know, could get the liveries created, get the media done and that sort of thing. And then it just built from there. Another thing we always tried to do is keep quite small. it made it more attractive for sponsorship, and that helped us as well. It helped the perception of who we are, and then obviously the results. Gregor kept on winning, and with that winning, other drivers are obviously interested in joining as well, and that helped build where we are today, essentially.
Presumably at that point, though, this was not a place where you were making your money. You had a career outside of the sim world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were some money tournaments back then. It's kind of drifted across the years, up and down. Certainly the last 3 or 4 years, it's gone a bit crazy, but there were some money tournaments. I remember there was a Live for Speed tournament where you could win like a 60k BMW, things like that. So there were some cool events going around, but nothing to the scale of nowadays.
Yeah, and I think the boss of G2 won that tournament,
Danny.
didn't he? And beat the head of Red Bull Racing to the final.
Did he? I don't know about that.
Yeah, he beat Niels. Yeah, Niels was second.
Did he? Oh, right. Well,
I don't know why I know that.
Let me put a flame out to those guys, because I had the world record in Blackwood at the time, and it was only open to German speakers. So you're lucky, boys. You're lucky.
So how did Team Redline develop from those early beginnings to become almost like an elite club now? It's so synonymous. It's so famous.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously entering the major championships was our strength. From the NASCAR side, we did a lot of NASCAR 2003. Then we moved on to rFactor, did that quite heavily, and then iRacing came about. And even though that was a bit of a grind, competing in it at that time was the pinnacle. So being in the kind of world championship side of things there, the races were broadcast. They're broadcast to a great quality. And then suddenly, actually, there was a lot of credibility with that championship. And then obviously Gregor with his performances, and there were a lot of other guys who also performed great. We've had many winners. Atsi came runner-up in one of the world championships. Ollie and Alexi won races. We had Luke McLean, Aussie guy, winning races. So yeah, we've competed at a very strong level there. And actually that, I think there was a shift when you saw a lot of pro drivers who had grown up with us in the background. You know, Lando and Max, for instance, are slightly older than our team. So, and many of the guys knew about us when they were growing up. So when there was an opportunity for us to kind of help develop them and them to develop us in some ways, then absolutely, it worked really well. And I think when Max joined us, that was quite a good turning point. But actually, sorry, forgive me, the biggest turning point was when we developed Richie Stanaway. And Richie Stanaway at the time was, he was racing in F3, F2, I think, actually just come off the back of a big crash at Spa. And his back had been done. And credit to him, he didn't give up. And he decided to go in sim racing. And on the back of that, he trained with Atsi, and Atsi managed to get him up to be the iRacing Pro Series World Pro Series champion. And that was a huge achievement, because you got a real world racer steps into sim racing and actually got a major trophy. And I remember Richie saying that it was probably one of his biggest achievements.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And then from there, Max joined us, and obviously what a huge name to join us. And Max kept his kind of skills sharp. Lando joined us as well. And then just with the rise of real racers coming into the program, it just became, the visibility just became a lot higher. And actually, we're at a new kind of evolution, the merging of real or pro drivers, should I say, and sim racers. It's actually becoming a total crossover at this stage.
And as you say, perhaps before Max or with Max, you now have on your books 24 pro drivers, famous names that we would know from all different walks of real life motorsport. So many that, in fact, you were able to have a championship the last couple of about a month ago.
Oh, real racers never quit. Yeah, I mean, not all those guys are with us, but certainly a good handful. And yeah, I mean, it's great to have their knowledge and experience, especially as sim racing is becoming more in many ways more like motorsport, and you need engineering behind you. You need that mentality, and that mental aspect is something that I think a lot of sim racers can work on, and that's a desire to win. It's a focus to practice, and certainly we look at that as a key part of any person that joins us, is that kind of desire.
So what does these famous pro drivers add to the sim pros that you have? Is it that is, how much do you actually get from the likes of Lando and Max?
Do you know what? They are, in some ways, they were really pro, like their approach. And, they come into this, if we're doing a major race, they are all over it. And they want to make sure we got the telemetry in place, that everything's done, that they feel comfortable in the race environment, because they're pushing as hard as they can as well. So yes, there is a sense of professionalism. When you're being paid multi-million pounds, you've got to be professional, right? Yes, you need that exterior as well to show your character, but you're there to do business, especially for what you get paid for. And those guys bring that to this team, that a sense of professionalism that we need to focus to get the job done.
And just one of the last questions on Team Redline. How many people are in behind the scenes, the people that are not the stars, but how many more form Team Redline?
Do you know what? That's a really good question, because over the last year or so, we've had to really expand. So it's not just from myself, Atsi, Gregor, Diedrich. We've had to expand into guys that can help read telemetry, guys that can potentially program to get data out of systems, guys who help run our social, guys who help with the logistics of the whole team, because we've had to expand. You need more people who understand the scene and who can develop talent as well. And then finally, you need people that can look for new talent. There are so many different racing platforms at the moment. I mean, you've got to keep your eye or keep your finger on the pulse to be able to see what's going on. And I think that, yes, we've had to expand, but it makes us more robust for the future, certainly.
And there are no places that Redline don't race. You are across all platforms, whether it be simulation or sim arcade.
Yes and no. I mean, the only ones we don't do are things like Forza, because Forza's faster on controller. We think that slightly deviates away from our roots. But we do try and spread our wings a bit. I made a conscious decision a few years ago to really look to boost our Gran Turismo team. And we looked at some of the amazing talents there. And these guys are amazing. They're facing 1 million other competitors. The numbers are astonishing. And actually, we built a really strong team. We had a guy called Immortal back in the day. He's the best on GT6. We've got guys like Mikhail Hazal, who's now world champion. I mean, world champion. No mean feat. Manu, a number of amazing drivers there. So we know that some platforms we need to build in. F1 Esports, we needed to build in that. So we helped develop some of the talent in that. We look at each platform, see what value they're going to bring. And even now, that's even more important when you look at each of these platforms, because, our drivers are being asked to do so many different things now that we've got to be quite selective.
And so with all these things you've got to do, and we haven't even touched on rFactor yet, do you get a chance to do any driving yourself still?
It's gone, man. It's gone. Those days are over. I tried some recently and I was just like, why am I 5 seconds off the pace? Why is that? And one thing I realized is over the years is that my level of concentration has dropped. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons. I don't really care if I'm 1 inch away from the curb anymore. I'm just like, yeah, let's just drive around this corner. And I think that's one of the things that I've got to relearn. But yeah, my days are numbered, unfortunately.
Good news, though, of fans of this studio series. One of the things we like to do is to see our guests rig. And even though Dom is not very good and not doing a lot of sim racing, he still has a rig which is very familiar because it looks very similar to mine. As a break, here is Dom's rig.
Hey guys, I'm Dom Duhan and I'm going to give you a quick tour of my sim rig. It's pretty modest compared to some, but certainly good for me. Firstly, my trusty rig. This is the SimLab TR1, it's off the Team Redline, and it's something we kind of developed with SimLab. Super lightweight, but really robust, really strong. Really good actually. And what else we got here? My trusty CSW base I've had for many moons and it's served me well. And my awesome, I love this wheel, is the limited edition F1 wheel from Fnatic. Absolutely love that. Pedals wise, I'm going for the V3s at the moment with their load cell. Really good to get the power down actually, I find with this. I run triple screens. I know the purists will love this. Sorry guys, I will fix it. I know there's a good old gap between the screens here. I can get away with it. I don't know how to. Also the trusty gloves. Sim racing needs these gloves. So I feel gloves, SR2s. And I guess that's about it. I've got a few more wheels over here that I use. F1. The McLaren F1 wheel is really good with the hand clutch. Yeah, that's me.
Dom, I'm so glad that you have exactly the same rig as me, other than the screens.
Great minds, man. Great minds.
And of course, the TR1 is a Team Redline slimline rig. I chose it because it fits into my very small apartment, which I'm not in today. But a kind of a nice partnership that you had there with SimLab. SimLab.
Yeah, SimLab. Yeah, no, it's awesome actually. I mean, yeah, we wanted something quite sleek but functional, and Richard at SimLab, well, he knows how to build these things. So no, it's all good. Go buy yours now. There you go. Plug.
I'm back. Sorry, I just had to reset my screen a second there. So we move on to away from Team Redline for a moment. I know we've got some questions coming in from people wanting to know more about that, but I want to talk a little bit about rFactor 2. What is your role exactly within rFactor 2?
I think so. rFactor 2 is owned by Studio 397, and for that time, the kind of strategic and commercial guy, essentially. So I look at the overall strategy, where the title is going, who we work with, how we kind of build more value into the product, how we try and position ourselves in esports, because obviously that's a bit of my heritage. Yeah, a close finger on the pulse when it comes to anything to do with new licenses and things like that. So quite an exhaustive role, but definitely rewarding.
I imagine it's exhausting at the moment after the last couple of months. COVID has had a massive effect on sim racing. How has it affected rFactor 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. You've got this terrible thing going on one side, but on the other side, we've had the highest sales that we've had in many years. Additionally, we're seeing the level of engagement up through the roof through the esports activities that we're doing as well. So, you know, I've got members of my family who are being really negatively affected on some ways, and then on my side, the work is incredibly hard, but I feel quite fortunate to be in this position.
And let's talk about some of those partnerships. I suppose the first one really that came about during this COVID situation, only a few days after the cancellation of the Australian Grand Prix, was the partnership with The Race, this magazine that exists online, decided to do some sim racing. You and I know exactly why that's the case, but it turns out to be quite a genius partnership for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Darren, we've known for some time. We worked with him for McLaren's World's Fastest Gamer. We also worked with him to push out our kind of GT Pro series that we were doing. And then just before Melbourne, Darren came to us with a proposition and to do the race. And we were like, okay, we've got 3 days. Let's see how we do it. And we did it. And I just remember whilst the stream was going, I was going, have we really got 55,000 concurrent viewers on YouTube? I mean, it was absolutely insane. And it quite shocking. But on the other hand, I was thinking, this is it. We've made it. It's been 20 years. We've made it. You know what I mean? I had a sense of euphoria about this because finally we were getting some traction. Finally, the world was seeing it. And you know, it wasn't people just hating on racing titles, which they usually do in motorsport channels. It was actually, wow, this is amazing. You know, all of these sorts of things. And just the excitement was just incredible. And from there, I think that set a great foundation for all the other events that we've done.
It's almost, I think, been weekly ever since there's been the race of some kind. So many pro drivers, so many legendary drivers now involved. How is the relationship with those people, as well, of course, with Darren and his team? And do you getting much feedback from them on how rFactor 2 feels?
Yeah, we get too much, I would say. These guys, I mean, yeah, no, a lot of them are legends. You know, we got sim racers, we've got pros, and we've got legends. And certainly the legends, oh my God, some of the things. We need more grip. More grip is the thing that real legends always need. And then they go and absolutely smash it around the track, like with four-wheeled slides and everything. So that I think they're doing fine on their grip levels. But no, really, we do get feedback from drivers as well, especially the pro drivers. And certainly I think we take a lot of that on board. And we make adjustments week to week to make sure the model feels kind of more realistic. I mean, the way that rFactor physics work is it's such a complicated physics engine. You can plug in all of the data. You still need to tweak the handling. You'll get close with all the data, but you still need to tweak it. And it's great to have pro drivers that actually understand sim racing as well as real racing.
So the studio is as flat out as it's ever been, trying to kind of respond to all that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we've got physics engineers, we've got lots of guys from different areas. So yeah, certainly we get feedback nearly every week, and we act upon that. Yeah, so it's a good relationship, because suddenly you're getting loads of guys who have never experienced sim racing before. You're getting people like Mario Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi, Alonso, even, who hasn't really done sim racing. I know he had his own team, but it wasn't really him, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They're coming into it and they're fast out the box. They are fast. Alonso's a beast in sim racing. I think he's got another career, really. But they do have good feedback straight away and on what works and what doesn't. And it's we can take that. We understand where the issues are and how to fix them. And I think they've been pretty happy with that.
But of course, another massive amount of work that you guys have had to do over the last couple of months is kind of keep up with the deal that you had that came up quite late with Formula E. You did have a car, and I think you may have had 2 Formula E tracks at the time, Hong Kong, Monaco, and Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Formula E is a totally different world to the rest of motorsport. The tracks are totally different, and you were suddenly Formula E announcing a 7-8 round championship. That must have been so hard to kind of put together.
It was. The good news is that I think we've got quite a good platform for developing new content. So, if there's any studio that could turn something around like that, I think it's us, because rFactor 2 naturally was quite an open platform, and it meant we can develop content for it relatively quickly. But still, the championship, there were a lot of, we went into it a bit kind of not nervous, but, a bit like, oh, what's going to happen here? But actually, the organization around it has been really good. Certainly, there's been some craziness with some of the driving. But from an entertainment perspective, I think that's been quite exciting. And I would say that, a lot of the guys that take part in that are pretty quick as well. Like Stoffel won this round and was only, I think, a few tenths off Kevin Siggy, who won the sim round. So I mean, these lines are really blurring. But in terms of the production, yes, we had a couple of tracks, Hong Kong and Monaco. And I've been involved with Formula E for quite a few years now, and always see them as, they always kind of push the limits and they always try and do something new. And I think what they're trying to achieve is pretty admirable, bringing motorsport to cities around the world and all of that. And I think that sim racing, Formula E needs to be in sim racing more than other platforms. And actually, yes, we looked at how we can expand the tracks. We worked with some of our partners and we managed to build Berlin and New York, both laser scanned circuits in a very short space of time, and watch this space.
Absolutely. It's something that obviously Formula E splashed massively when they first came on the scene with their Vegas E race, and then kind of got a bit confused and lost their way. So it's fantastic to see them back with RF2. Possibly the biggest headline for you, though, and those two are pretty big. Le Mans coming up in 2 weeks' time. Was it 200 drivers, something like that, from the real and the virtual world? The backing of the ACO. This is mammoth, bigger than anything else we've ever seen.
Yeah, no stress. No, it's going to be good. I mean, I'm not directly involved with it, obviously, but certainly I've seen how Motorsport Network are going to be dealing with much of it, and they're doing a great job. I mean, I've got to say, getting together 200 drivers, multiple manufacturers, sponsors, partners, run test days, it's no mean feat. And it's been done all in a few weeks. So credit to everyone involved with that. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be on track. And it's going to be great. I'm really excited about it.
Are you a little bit nervous though? Because that, as you say, it's a huge strain on the platform, and it really is asking everything. How much do you feel when a thing goes wrong, for instance, in Formula E or the race, that affects the platform, or vice versa, has a positive effect as well?
Yeah, I think obviously you go into these things thinking the worst, but in most of the things that we've done, we've had a good success rate, and I know the guys are working kind of furiously behind the scenes to make the platform super robust. But we can't, if you never know what's going to happen. If somebody does a huge DDoS attack on us, how do we deal with that? So every eventuality has been looked at, and it's going to be a good event.
I'm incredibly excited, and at the moment I don't think I'm even involved, so I'm just excited as a fan, which is great. I'm going to turn to a couple of questions. If you do have questions, please quickly get them into our chat below, or indeed on Twitter at Ben Consti. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Question from Andrew Perth, who I think is at Williams Supporters on Twitter. Going back to Team Redline, he would like to know, what made you think that sim racing had a future that you created Team Redline, and what do you look for in taking on new drivers?
Well, certainly when I created it, we thought having a more professional way of looking at things would allow us to get more sponsors, because actually back then, like 20 years ago, Quake scene was massive. And I remember like Fatality, Jonathan Wendell getting $250,000 prize, and we thought, do you know what, sim racing is going to get this. And I remember I was we nearly were sponsored by Arrows Formula One back then. It was all on the rise. It looked really exciting, but actually it was a harder grind than that. But I still think what we did, the steps we took back in those days, just to make it a bit more of a one, a marketable platform, and two, have a sense of professionalism was the key. And what was the other question? I've forgotten the other.
The other question was, what do you look for in new drivers?
So, speed. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. Being able to hang it around the track, set world records, and then consistency, because we think if you've got speed, you can probably build a bit of consistency. It's just about tailoring it. And then I would say mentality. Are you a winner? Do you want to go out there and dominate the world? Because that's what we're looking for.
Ellie Sky on Twitter is a commentator and director, I think, for Apex Online. And he asks, I would like to start a proper 24-hour race series, multi-class on rFactor 2, but I keep being advised against it because of driver changes. Are you making this stronger? I presume this is what all the work will be behind the scenes to absolutely firm up any issues when it comes to the 24 hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think a number of fixes have been done on that already, in truth, and absolutely, we've got a whole team working on that sort of stuff. So I think that's already been resolved. But sometimes we do have. We've had a couple of events which haven't gone as well, and certainly there will be a bit of feedback around that. And do you know what? We see it all, and we understand it all, and we know how important it is to resolve that, because I, from my strategic view, want rFactor 2 to succeed. And how do I do that? I can't have something that isn't succeeding technically. So we need to make sure it works.
How do you test something like 200 different drivers in 50 different teams running all together for 24 hours?
That's a really good point, actually, because the geniuses, I asked the same question, and the geniuses in the studio have set up automated systems to be able to have multiple concurrent connections and do loads of different actions, because you know what, we can't have 200 drivers at one time non-stop for 7 days of the week doing stuff. But no, we've set up automation. That's probably the best way. And then we also use obviously live events as well. We've also already run some tests, and so far so good.
I'm, again, so excited. Sebastian Goldbach says, let's talk a little bit about the commitment from manufacturers. Obviously, Team Redline is Team Redline, but we're now seeing Formula One encouraging teams, and we've got Ferrari with a works team, Lamborghini doing things. It's just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword for us, because obviously works teams want to have their own drivers, and what we realized is some of these works teams have huge budgets, and it's going to be difficult to retain drivers when you have people throwing around big sums of money. So our ambition was always to look at how we can provide for some of these manufacturers, so how we can work together. And case in point, we worked with McLaren for a number of years. We've worked recently with Kevin Ziggy and BMW, and Kevin represents BMW in Formula E. And I think this is a trend that will continue. We run Porsche 24, which is official Porsche Netherlands. And we've had great success there as well. So I think with manufacturers, some are definitely easier to work with than others, but certainly working together with them to get the performance out of a team is how I see some of the future.
Now, a person called Felix has been in touch. You may know the name. And he says, do you think your partner will leave you now that you're so engrossed with esports? Felix is your son, right?
My 9-year-old son. God, did engrossed, did he? Yeah, okay. I wonder who really wrote this. Yeah. I don't quite know how to answer that. Being put on the spot. Yes. I'm really hoping that she hangs around for a while.
Well, it's her fault, right? She showed you how to connect in the first place.
It's totally her fault. She shouldn't have done it. But you know, what's she doing watching me live on this program right now? How embarrassing is that?
Waiting for dinner, I guess.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to speak to you, Dom. Thank you so much for all your time. We've slightly gone over our half-an-hour limit, but it has been fascinating. And for me, I could go on another 2 hours. So we nearly did that the other night with Nikki. Thank you very much, Dom. We look forward to meeting some of your drivers perhaps in the next couple of months. And I cannot wait to see what happens for the Le Mans 24 Hours.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and see you next week.